Alright, in this comparative study, I will be focusing on the Academy winner for 2019, Parasite by Bong, Joon-ho, and Ramin Bahrani's The White Tiger released in 2021, adapted from Arvind Adega's New York Times bestseller with the same name. Both movies are perfect examples of dark comedies ironically commentating societal issues by juxtaposing class struggles in different socioeconomic scenarios. Hence, each movie is justified to be studied in this context, as it each suitably portrays events from the rich to the poor in Indian and Korean cultures in a relatively same timeline. Parasite is a story focused on a group of individuals, the Kim family cutting their way into the grandiose mansion of the well-off Park household. A supposedly symbiotic relationship arises between the two, and surprising circumstances lead to exploitation on both sides of the spectrum, till a turn of events causes a fatal outcome. The White Tiger, on the other hand, is a voiceover narration of an individual, Ram, and his wax-to-wish story to the Chinese Prime Minister Wen Jiabao, and how his journey up the social ladder arises with the nature of the upper and lower castes of Indian society, and how the circumstances he's in allow him to escape poverty and con his way to the top as an entrepreneur by similarly killing his master and using the technological boom in India to his advantage. Greed and class discrimination both play a leading role in both movies. Using film techniques in relation to the narrative, editing, and cinematography of the film, I'll be comparing each film to see how Marxist film theory in Parasite and The White Tiger are used to display parallels in class and socioeconomic inequality in Korean and Indian society. Coming from the ideas of Sergei Einstein and a few others post the nationalization of the Russian film industry in 1917, Marxist film theory elementarily has two parts, where one expresses how films are structured as an art form to tell stories, and how each scene can be broken down to tell a story. The other is how filmmaking and narratives aim to influence or comment on the political, social, or economical standards set in society. In relation to set theory, I will be looking at the socioeconomic context in each country, and how the movies comment on economic immobility, and how people do whatever is necessary to rise the social ladder of society. Marxist film theory also revolves around decentralizing the narrative of the story away from individuals and generalizing groups in society to exfoliate the issues of the hierarchical structure we have in society. Each movie successfully tells audiences a compelling narrative that incorporates elements of Marxist film theory as well as others, exfoliating the corrupt behaviors within the social ladder. Using narrative to comment on economic and social growth, editing for style and showcasing collectivism, and lastly, shot compositions for insight into the different power dynamics, each movie incorporates Marxist film theory into its elements, which need to be discussed to see how it fits into the overall context of discussing inequality. Narrative-wise, both movies have the catalyst of economic and social growth as a leading motivation for the plot of the films. With the Kim family desire to rise out of their basement home and into the grandiose mansion of the Park family household, the slow and literally hostile takeover leads to a suspenseful rising class, as well as their value in the socioeconomic standard. Plot-wise, the movie starts off slowly, with Ki-woo struggling to get Wi-Fi from his semi-basement apartment. These apartments are remnants of the bunkers from the Korean War, which now showcases the soaring realistic prices from the South Korean economy, which has led to people having to use these basements as homes, literally living below others. This, heavily juxtaposed with the modernist contemporary architecture of the Park family house, it points out the income inequality in South Korean society. The White Tiger, on the other hand, has a very similar approach to showcasing differences in classes using homes and compositions of narrative elements. Ram is always below, physically and metaphorically. The high-rise buildings and high-class bungalows compared to the stark basement residence and the outdoor house of Ram's family, we see a clear difference between the higher castes and the lower castes. India's recent poverty bubble, allowing about 100% of foreign direct investment in construction and development projects, is also shown through the various narrative elements, especially in the developed areas of India's society. The director, Ramin himself compares The White Tiger with Parasite and how an unreliable narrator of each of the movies showcase dark comedies commenting on class conflict in each relative society.
An unreliable narrator.
Right.
Which is always compelling in a
Sure.
movie, right? Recently you see this kind of thing in that Korean film Parasite.
That's right.
A darkly humorous story about class conflict.
Right.
Right?
Right.
I think there's some similarities there.
A later scene also shows the progression of better food and the rise in the class of the Kim family. From a bag of moldy white bread, to food in the driver's cafeteria, to happily eating in the pizza places they were once making boxes for, and finally, the overindulgent feast at the Park family mansion while the Parks were away, amounts to showing how the Kims are leaving their poverty-ridden background into the higher middle class of Korea. Here, the Kims mention their take on a business with a mom-and-pop chicken shop and a Taiwanese cake shop, meaning they were once citizens who aimed to start entrepreneurial ventures, which in real life was attributed to the low-interest government provided after the 1997 Asian financial crisis. Their failure, like much of the people around them, showcases the bane of poverty and the struggles people face in the hierarchy of society. Food is also important in Indian culture, and different castes have different relationships with food. In the house Balram grows up in, an extended family that is of the lower castes, the Hawaii family literally translates to sweet maker. The name gives us information on which part of the hierarchy of the caste system Balram belongs to, and how his position as a lower member of society lets us understand how life is for the people around his liking. So Bahram's rejection of meat while going back home shows how he aims to be like his richer counterparts, and how his class isn't a Brahmin and eats meat. His change in food choice aims to mimic the habit of the rich, and it leads towards the feast the Kims have to embody their rich counterparts. This take on food in Indian culture is very important, and here it references the direct impact of the poor being influenced by the rich, and how they aspire to fit that criteria. Marxist film theory promotes the editing of the film as the most important aspect of a film's production, hence its relevance to each of the movies lets us see the differences within both. As for movies that both use suspense to lead their plot, both movies use quite harsh or collectivist editing techniques which fit the Marxist plan quite decently. The use of harsh techniques and cuts create montage successfully, presenting the scenes that move the story forward with ease and make audiences face into the screen, knowing and flowing the plot of the film. Parasite, notably with its long shot with a hidden credit to director Alfred Hitchcock, successfully with smooth cuts flows the story for us to progress with the plot of the characters. The use of all members individually creates a sense of community and further represents the collectiveness of the lower class in Korean society. The progression is smooth, although the quick cuts make it clear that we are watching a story. The subtle cuts and techniques lead audiences to move in the shadows not knowing what will occur next. The ambiguity allows audiences to guess for the future of the Kim family, and while neither class is really presented as a villain, the actions are as a result of the outcomes of the position in society. These point out the differences in the wants and the needs for each side of the social coin. On the other hand, The White Tiger with its hip music and art house style creates more of these uses of drastic cuts and miscellaneous shots to show the setting and circumstances of Indian society. Even so, it is able to ridicule the representation of poverty in Slumdog Millionaire, while effectively showing things for the way they are. The use of montages progresses the scenes, and Bahram's white over narration effectively tells audiences the mind of the character. Furthermore, it showcases the mentality he has formed living in the way of millions within his caste and class. Showcased through the rough cuts along with Bahram's maniacal attitudes towards society, it sets a Joker-like commentary where the audience hears an ambiguous narrator's rags to riches story, and the progression of the experiences he has, like many others in Indian society, we get a sense of collectivism within the group of lower caste in Indian society. It's also moments of one fending for himself. All this amounts to showcasing the behavior from both sides of the socioeconomic spectrum, which is universal in some way. As explained by director Bong Joon-ho, we apply this to Parasite, along with The White Tiger.
섬세해질 수 있죠. 근데 그렇게 더 한국적인 걸 묘사해서 부랑 리치, 푸어 이 어떤 개념에 도달할수록 오히려 더 유니버설하기 때문에 더 로컬하게 한국적으로 파고들수록 사실은 결과적으로는 더 그게 유니버설해져.
Finally, a key concept of theory also focuses on the visuals as one of the most important aspects of filmmaking. Shot compositions rely on the use of various features to create something that can be broken down into its elements, attributing different themes, or propagating different power dynamics. The shots in each film allow scene reading to show relevant messages and point out the class differences in each relative society. Parasite is one of the most elaborate movies released this decade, and through its thorough storyboarding and meticulous production, we as an audience understand how cinematographic elements amalgamate to give meaning to the movie. Starting off, Parasite's scene composition and the use of camera movement paces the film accordingly and gives the movie a pace suitable for moments leading up to or away from the climactic swindling the Kims use. Parasite's editor, Jin-Mo Yang, says the whole movie is only about 960 cuts, but it seems like a lot more because of all of the camera movement. These deliberate use of long shots, then framed by slow zooms, are specifications of going from a medium to various shot types without cuts in order to lure people into the story. We as an audience don't see this unless the scenes are sped up. This, along with the pans and stagnant shots, showcase a variety of space and characteristics the rich have contrasted to the poor. Notably, the use of a dolly and more use of space in the VFX-produced park mansion, and the rather stagnant and constrained shots at the semi-basement apartment, showcase the various livelihoods of different income groups in Korean society. The White Tiger, on the other hand, notably uses much more discontinuous edits to harshly put together and progress its story. The rough cutting may be a reference to the bustling culture in India, as well as mimic the eccentric art house style. Pairing this with Korea, it shows how life progresses at such a fast pace for the lower income groups. With the establishing shots of scenes looking at Indian surroundings, they exemplify the crowded nature of India and the deviousness of works that servants in Indian society face. Framing-wise, The White Tiger also has much more constrained shots where the lower income groups are present, where more freedom and space are present in the high-rise areas of affluent people. Furthermore, the framing directly hints toward the different power dynamics in various relationships, where Bahram is shown as lower or rising depending on the point of the plot. Overall, both movies use cinematography as a catalyst for the deeper themes in the economic divide and a lot more of Indian and Korean society. Both movies present an elaborate case study that can't be condensed in such a small time frame. Although, through the presented examples, we see how each movie successfully uses elements of Marxist film theory to propagate a message of socioeconomic inequality and people struggle with the capitalist system around us. One is more focused on showing the stagnant nature of people in a society post-capitalism, while the other shows how resorting to monkey-like self-interested behavior is the only way to rise in a world full of people experiencing the same problems as you. The use of various techniques in relation to the editing, cinematography, and narrative elements in each medium propagates equivocal meanings to the stories. Through the simple juxtaposition of class struggles in different socioeconomic scenarios, we as an audience are able to wonder about our place in society, along with the hierarchical nature of society that needs to be evaluated for a more equitable future.